Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sue Cotter.
Good morning, Yasodara Romero Fernandez.
Yes. Hi, right voice
Hi.
for you. Where is your voice in the world? And having your
Yeah,
voice no matter what.
yeah, such an
Ah,
interesting subject. Yes, I love it. I've been playing with this for the last few days because my voice has been going like changing and changing more and more. And it's like the question was like, Sue, are you willing to have your voice no matter what? And that includes like that energetic voice too. You know, your actions, your choices, like what are they speaking?
yeah, saying what you're actually like, what's in your head, or at
Yeah.
least like looking at where am I redrawing my conversations, or where am I not actually saying something because I'm not sure if it's actually what it's going to destroy or what it's going to create.
Wow, I love that. So it's holding back, like that holding back energy of if I say this, will I destroy it? What are the consequences if I say what I'm going to say? That's so cool that you asked that. Because I really get that. For me, I would have had that thing of like, oh, I'll shut up now. I won't say anything because that might trigger something, and also to know that it's not always required for me to say something.
Yeah, I love how you said like what are the consequences, like rather than looking at what will this create. Like sometimes it
Yeah.
feels like as if like, it's interesting, like how much have we like been like intertwining like what will something create as what will be the consequences. And if you look
Yes.
at that, it's actually something totally different.
Yeah.
Although when you ask what's it gonna create, like, you can be aware of like, wow, it's really expensive, it's really light. And then there's this part where like, oh, that's really heavy, where you can get like,
Yeah.
okay, probably like the heaviness is going to have like different consequences.
Yeah. So can you talk a bit more about that? Because, for me, I use that question as if I say this or if I make this choice, what will it create? And it's like sometimes there is that energy of the consequence, which is a judgment, right? Because that means there's going to be something like, consequences are really like for me, it's like punishment.
Yeah, what if consequences is just one of the possibilities? It's just one
Mm.
reality that could get created with a choice. And it's so interesting if you're going to see like, wow, every choice actually creates something different. And it will sometimes
Yeah.
add things, sometimes it will not create big change, sometimes, but it will all create a future. And so, like, what if the consequences is just one choice, and then you can look at, oh, okay, is that something I'm aware of, and do I want to choose that, yes or no? And then you can look from there. Okay, so what other choices do I have available here? If that's not the only choice, what other choices?
Wow.
And I love with those questions that you immediately once you bump up, like let's say you ask a question, you bump up to like a consequence that might happen if you choose something, and then you go like, okay, so what other choices are there? You direct your energy directly like to all the other things that are available to you.
Yeah. Wow. And then like when you ask like what are the consequences if I choose this? But also like for me, the minute I actually say the word consequences, it's like I want to jump to, well, actually what possibilities are available here if I choose this? So it's like the consequence is another possibility to opening the doors to more possibilities. I love
Yeah.
that.
And how
Wow.
often is like also a consequence actually something that's creating something for the future? It's not always fun, but it's always like, what if everything always is like a contribution to where you're heading?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I love the title of this, Where is Your Voice in the World, right? And as you're talking about like heading and what is it creating? So where's your voice in the world? For me, the minute I hear that title, I go, like, I'm here in Cork, Ireland. But I know that my choices, my actions, like I always think of the dominoes, and it's just like I make a choice and it impacts all of them. and not even impacts, it actually creates that, you know, that follow on energy, right? So my choice. And it's like, you know, for people out there at the moment in the world that we're like with restrictions, limitations, and government rules and stuff like that, like I've really gotten to see, you know, do people actually feel that they don't have a voice in the world with all of this going on because the government make the rules? Or what is that like? What's that like right now? Or is there another possibility for people to look at here that they can have their voice in the world no matter what's going on?
Well, I'm going to ask you, how is it like to be in Ireland? Like, you know, have you had like the feeling that your voice is kind of like, that you have it, or that you like, you know?
Well, it's interesting because I really just stepped into that space of like I don't really like people say to me like, oh, and more restrictions came in last night, and I'm like, okay. Before I would have chosen that, like it would have been like a choice to ignore it, but there would have been a resistance and a reaction there, right? But this time it's like space, and I'm kind of like, okay, but I'm going to still choose whatever I'm going to choose anyway, right? But it's not from that energy of I'm going to choose anything, you know, I'm going to choose from that energy of like, but it's the choice of I know that I can go beyond this.
That's interesting that you say that, because yesterday also I was looking at, okay, so where am I still, like, you know, the things that are very that are actually created to make this reality function. So there is like relationships, there is money, there is like all the things we think we need.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at, okay, so where am I still looking to create from those elements, which always keeps me running into the rules and regulations and things that aren't possible. But then there is a whole lot of things possible. And so what kind of elements would I have to start looking at? So I actually start hearing the whispers of consciousness that have a totally different vibration. And it's interesting
Yeah.
because there is still a lot possible in the world. But like if you play the game like solely to win this reality, it's strange, because then you'll run into everything this that belongs to this reality. I was looking at it
Well,
yesterday and I was like, wow, it's really time to, like, you know, if you want to create beyond, you have to be willing to listen to the whispers of that beyond. And it doesn't mean like, you know, not respecting the rules or whatever, right? Because like, yeah, there is still also
yeah,
things going on that if you are willing to also take that into account, um, you can start creating something different.
totally. And something just pinged for me because I had this as you're talking about this, I really got to see like I love to actually lift weights. Like I've been doing it for a long time. And um for me, I looked at this energy, and it was so funny that it was this week it became very, excuse me, in my world of like, oh my God, none of the gyms are open. Where am I going to go and lift weights? Da, 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 da. And I was like, this is really interesting. I didn't have this like 2 weeks ago. I didn't have this go on, you know? And I was like, so for me, it's like, what am I aware of? How many people right now are
Oh,
actually going to, oh my God, all the gyms are closed. It's January. This is the time I get my body to do this and look like this. And I'm like, this is so interesting. So then right now, as you're talking, I'm like, wow. So hearing the whispers beyond for me is in nature. That's where I hear the whispers of beyond. When I go to the forest, I actually like just really just, it's so much space. Like there's very little people where I go, and it's just like, okay, communion, you know, and listening, you know, being with the trees, being with the energy of the forest. And the whispers of beyond for me, like what I just got right now as you started to speak to it, was this energy of like, you know, there's so many other things that I have not, so many other choices and questions that I have not asked my body about going beyond this reality when it comes to moving your body. Like
yeah.
actually, like, okay, running, walk, like my body is asking for something else. And it's my body showing me right now the energy of what it's asking for. And it's beyond. There's no words for it. But there's something different.
Yeah, and I love, like, you know, what is sometimes interesting for me, like do we really need to go into the forest before we hear or perceive the things that we do in the forest? And it's like, so how, in what way are we all connected to everything? And if we would start to actually listen to that more than to this reality, like what would all of us hear? Because it will also be different. And I think that's part of also having our voice in the world, is that we all look at the world in a different way. We all hear different things. Like, you know, we all perceive different things. And what if that's our power? What if that is actually having your voice in the world? It's the willingness to actually be aware that whatever you're aware of, probably not so many other people are aware of that. And until you're going to actually take the step and start creating that or start to be that, it's not available. It's probably not
Wow.
available. And that was the thing where for a long time, I was looking at what can I do? And then looking at other people, what do they do? And then, okay, so how can I do that too? But then a little better or a little different or a little more me. And it's interesting because then you always function from someone else's universe, right? As you said, like, wow, I was suddenly aware, like, who is actually having this conversation about the gym with themselves? I didn't have that in my world 2 weeks ago. Do I have it in my world? Or is that really like me just perceiving other people having thoughts, having conversations with themselves, complaining, which is like really interesting now because we're all connected, right? And so if some people start to have like stuff going on with their business or stuff going on with their relationship, or like, you know, how much are you aware of that at all times? But instead of just like acknowledging that, you start to create it as well.
Wow. So that brings me to that. Even when I read the ticker at the end of this StreamYard, I see having your voice in the world. And I just look at the energy of having whose voice are you having in the world? Because it's like, if we're aware and we're not acknowledging that we're aware, because this is oneness, we're all connected. If we're not acknowledging that we're aware, then we become at the effect of that energy. Yeah. So whose voice are you having in the world? It's lighter for me, even though my face is like that. It's so light, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Because even like the talk of the vaccine and even the talk of like who's getting it, who's not getting it. And I finally got to a space of actually, you know what, I was asking to be neutral. I was asking for the universe to show me, hey, you know what, show me neutral here. I'd like to actually function from that energy. And I really got to see none of the points of views were even mine, but it was something that I was aware of. Wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing also with like, you know, oneness for me. Like for a long time, it was like this, like, oh, it's very spiritual oneness and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, but like, are we actually like, you know, if you can stand next to somebody and like pick up their pains or pick up their tiredness or pick up their headache or stress, like, oh, is that actually where we are that? And then we try not to be that. So it's not possible, right? So, and it's interesting with that, like, we just pick up vibrations from everything and everyone around us. And what if that was actually like a power and a potency? And so also with having your voice, like, what if it all starts with acknowledging how aware you are? It's like, wow, okay, 99% of whatever is going on in my world, what if that was just something I'm aware of? And what if that was, if me acknowledging that, that was me having my voice?
Wow.
No matter what's going on around me, even if
me
you're
acknowledging that. Wow, that's amazing what you just said. Me acknowledging that. Like,
no matter
acknowledging
what.
like that, no matter what. Me acknowledging that, no matter what. It's like, what am I aware of? So when that energy shows up in your body, around you, you know, you start going into those like thoughts or like, you know, what can I say here? What can I not say here? Like the energy of asking asking that question, what am I aware of? Like that's a whole different space.
I love it also with my body because, like, you know, sometimes your body will get sick or suddenly something goes on and you're like, I didn't go to sleep like that. What's that? What? And like, for a long time, I thought like, oh, now I just became sick at night. And then at a certain point, I was like, it's really weird. If you go to sleep like really well and then you wake up and you're sick, okay, it's a possibility. But then one day I was with a friend somewhere and we went to sleep and we were perfectly fine both. And we both slept on another side of the room. And so I slept against the window and she slept against the wall. And the next morning we both wake up and we're like, good morning. And she has no voice and she feels as if she's like super sick. And so I was like,
Wow.
well, I don't really want to facilitate you, but like, have you asked who that belongs to? And she was like, oh no, I didn't. So the minute she asked, like, okay, so who does that belong to? Like in the next room, like behind the wall, there is somebody that starts to cough his lungs out. And we were both like, what? Oh my God. And so then we just started clearing it and like being like, okay, so everywhere you've actually been taking that on, where your body has been healing, where your body has been facilitating this night,
Yeah.
can it be changed? Can you let it go? And like in less than 50 minutes, like she was fine. But this is for me also like having your voice is also acknowledging that your body will pick up all kind of things to change them, to facilitate them, sometimes just because it's aware also while you think you're sleeping. And
Yeah.
then what if you'd start to really be aware of like, oh, that's funny. Okay, well, I can go sick through the world or I can start asking questions. And what if like having my voice, even if I feel as sick as a cow, is like starting to ask questions, even if it doesn't change immediately? Because we will also often
Totally.
decide, we'll ask the question and it's like, who does it belong to? And it's like, oh, it's not mine. So we'll start clearing. And then if it's not actually changing or going away, we will still often decide like, oh, it must be mine. But what if that's
Yeah.
actually no matter what part, no matter if it disappears, no matter if it stays, are you willing to acknowledge that actually you're aware?
Yeah. I love this conversation. This, like, are you willing to acknowledge that you're aware? And even play with it, even playing with it, because as you just said, if the result does not show up instantly, it's like, oh, it must be mine. I now have to try and fix it. I now have to go and heal it. I now have to blah, 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 blah. But actually, to really be present with it and notice the change, the little, no matter how little or big, no matter what, be with it. Be with
Yeah.
it, be present with it, and actually be willing to ask again, what am I aware of? Who am I aware of? You know? And it's that energy of like, even, I am aware that even me singing now has changed. And like sometimes I'll go into judges and I'm like, who am I being? Who am I aware of right now? What's that voice? Is that me? And it's just so to be in question. And I know for me is where the change occurs. It's really when I
Yeah.
get to perceive that change. It's like, okay, and next question. And it's without like when I'm not in that conclusion or in that place of, oh, well, I need for this to show up now to make sure that I ask the right question. No, it's actually, okay, so what am I aware of here?
Yeah. And it's like yesterday I had a conversation with Jenny B, like an X-Men facilitator, as well, about
Yeah.
how she had learned from Diva Diaz, who is like X-Men facilitator as well. Like how to actually, when you ask a question, to really allow the space to change. And so
Yeah.
that was so different, because how often do we go like, what am I aware of? What am I aware? And we go into our head to
Yeah.
actually find what we're aware of, rather than actually allowing that awareness now to start to open up. And so if
Yes.
you're
And
energetically aware, that's the only thing that actually matters. Whatever word you use, it's like it's all about the energy.
it's all about the energy. And I love that because I know Jenny, and I get like all these, and I know you're an X-Men facilitator as well as a Right Voice for You facilitator. But I also get how this stuff comes into play with so many classes. Like, you don't have to just attend a Right Voice for You class to actually get these tools, which is great, right? Because there's so many tools with Right Voice for You. But even like foundation classes, right? So foundation classes, which is the class that people go to take after they've taken a bars class, sometimes, the majority of times. So the
Yes.
foundation class, but there is parts in the foundation manual, a lot of places where these tools come into play as well, and exploring your voice without the form and structure or the limitations. Like, tell me more about that.
Oh, well, it's truly to start asking yourself, like, what is it I know about this? I would say, oh, you're going away. This might be Sue's computer falling out or not? Or the internet? Let me see. I can get it off and back on. No. So I can end this conversation for now, maybe. And then, well, what if you could start asking yourself also questions like, what is it that I know about this? How is it that I perceive? Oh, she's back. Yeah,
I'm back, but I'm on my phone now, so I hope you can hear me.
it works. Yeah. So can you maybe recapitulate like the last part of your question?
So the last part was when we were talking about like these tools and how they actually come into play in Access Foundation, the 4-day class. Like, can you talk a little bit more about, you know, like even, I don't even, the energy of it is like, what can people access, you know, in the foundation? So let's just talk
Yeah.
about that, Access Foundation.
So the foundation is a 4-day class, which sometimes online also gets given over 5 days, which is there to actually start to take apart all the foundations you've been taking on from other people, you've been creating your life from that aren't working. And so it's really interesting. Like if you look at like a foundation, it's something that's very vast. It's something that's pretty unchangeable and you can only build on top of it. And so when something like, you can see that often, like, you know, when like you have normal houses that are built on a foundation, if like a river floats or that kind of thing, that foundation will usually fall apart. Now, what did they, for example, do in Venice is that they started creating like houses from platforms. And so they started actually looking at how can we create a building that no matter what is actually gonna be able to move and change no matter what goes around it, no matter what goes on around it and what hits it. And so what the invitation of the foundation is actually to start looking in your life in every part, like where have I been creating it from a foundation, something that's unchangeable, and it's actually falling apart, but I'm then kind of keeping it together and it seems to work, but actually doesn't really work. And to start putting a platform into place. And then a platform that can be built on endlessly. You're muted, honey.
Sorry, love.
Yeah.
A platform that can be built on endlessly. So that's such a great description of the foundation class, because with foundation, like for me and so many that I have attended and chosen over the last 8 years, like every time that I choose a class, like the class becomes about what I'm ready to actually explore next. And it's like every time that I jump on a class, I'm like, no foundation has ever been the same. Like even though the manual, and which I love the manual because it changes so much, and it's like so up to date with everything that's going on in the world. It's just so amazing. So for me, like when you build that foundation or that platform, sorry, when you have that platform to actually go with whatever shows up, and you've got tools to like literally change anything,
Yeah.
no matter what shows up.
Yeah, because
I love what's explored in foundation. I mean, like the 4-day class, including like body work as well, which has like, I think it's like 8 processes or something over the course of the 4 days.
It's 4. It's 4.
4 processes?
Yeah. But I love,
Wow.
let's make 8.
I thought it was 8.
I love it. What do you know?
Yeah.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, maybe. So, and I love that. Like, I mean, I love when people take a foundation and even like speaking to people through the foundation or after the foundation, and it's like their whole life's just do a 180.
Yeah. And it's like, imagine like building, for example, all your relationship not as a foundation where you actually put more and more cement to keep it together, like concrete to put it together. Because that's what we usually learn, right? We're gonna like start creating something, no matter if it's your relationship or your business or your money, like your finances, whatever you like are creating. How often is that built on like the idea of creating a foundation and then like putting more and more concrete on top of it until it's unmovable and cracks apart, and then there is separation and there is all this kind of things. What the foundation is actually inviting you to is to start looking at, wow, what if I learn to create platforms? And so there is these tools that are gonna like start to dissolve all the concrete that you've been smearing around, or that other people have been smearing around, or that you've been putting together. And so you're gonna undo that. So first of all, there is like so much more space for people showing up. Because like if there is not that concrete anymore in anything, there is just space. And then there is all these kind of tools that are gonna actually give you like very pragmatic ways to start looking at, okay, so what can I actually use to change this kind of things? Okay, so what else have I been aware of that I have not been acknowledging, that if I would actually really look at that part and pieces, this would change the energy as well. And the beautiful thing about like consciousness is the moment you become present with something, it starts shifting and changing.
Yeah.
And so that's something we usually do. Usually we learn to be unpresent with a situation through doing or through checking out or through not being with our bodies or having all kind of distractions or addictions or whatever, which is all fine. It's a way. But what if there would be another way that was more generative?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I love the way you say, what if there was another way, to choose and it be more generative. And it's not that you have to stop anything, but the foundation showed me how you can add more tools or add more ways or add more, and not have to run. Because when a situation shows up that maybe people are like, oh my God, I'm so scared of this, I can't deal with it or whatever. It's like, what if being present with it is actually where more change occurs? And it's like that wave. It's like, surfing, and it's like up, down, whatever. And what if up and down wasn't good or bad? If up and down was just like the right?
Yes. So we start the foundation in 2 weeks, I think, from now. Is that correct?
27th. Yes. Is it 27th?
No, it's 21st.
21st.
Yes. So in 2 weeks from now.
I know.
Online over 5 evenings. Yes. And then there will be a Right Voice for You class also probably in February. We still have to look at that.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to go dive into this class.
Yeah.
And
thank you so much for being on here this morning.
Thank you. And what else is possible with your body as well and your voice?
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone.
See you soon, love.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.